Hey everyone, my name is Jesus Burgoa, but you can call me JR, and I'm the founder and CEO of Social Market, and this is the Social Ledger Report.
Cool. I'm excited to do this again. Episode 2. And it's been a super crazy week. Like we kind of went through the
Yep.
news and had to thin it out, pick what was the big one. So there's a few. I think the what do you want to talk about first? I think Circle.
Yeah, so like you said, we have a lot of stuff to cover. Right now, I think what might be the biggest story is Circle having an IPO. So, let me share my screen here for a moment. So you go anywhere on Twitter, and we're still calling it Twitter, and you're gonna see that Circle has made so much buzz since like Monday, even before April Fools, that it was going to have its IPO. Now, for those of you who don't know, it's having its second IPO. I believe it
Well,
was
a second IPO
2022
attempt.
attempt. That's right. So, yeah, it's very important to clarify. I think in 2022 is when it tried to initially IPO. Correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
but it failed. So
Yeah,
now,
so it was a reverse. It was they were going to do it via a SPAC, like a reverse merger, where they're just going to take a shell company and go public. Though the issue was essentially the SEC just wasn't approving it in the timeline, so they abandoned that attempt.
yep,
This one's going to be much more of a true bona fide IPO, where like it says here, they've hired J.P. Morgan and Citi to do the actual like process to go public versus doing a SPAC or something. Like I kind of guess SPACs are not cool anymore.
right. So, yeah, I mean, it's having some very big accredited investor like JP Morgan or bank rather, that's very, there's nothing that could potentially not let this happen unless something major were to happen. Like, I don't know, God forbid something like FTX happens where, the investors or rather the founders were, you know, not to be trusted to say the least. But, as far as that goes, actually, we did have a very interesting post made here. Now, this was made on April 1st, so I'm not exactly sure, if this is real. It might be real. I mean, this looks legit, but you can see kind of like all their numbers, what their profit, their margins, what kind of revenue they're making, and how it's gone since 2022. And if you compare here at KPI data, what's highlighted in red, it shows no growth, but keep in mind that in 2022 and 2023, those were the years that crypto was falling off again. 2021 was the year that crypto just boomed the entire industry. Bitcoin hit the first all-time high of 75,000. And now we're seeing that the I'm guessing the KPI data are about the same between 2022 and 2024. So I think, there's a big appetite again for crypto, maybe because there's not as much regulation issues. There's going to be a lot more clarity on that. So, you know, that's what I think. But what do you think,
Yeah.
Leon?
So like I've looked at their numbers, and I think also a lot of people have kind of gone and did like deep dissections of this. Like
Mhm.
there's a bunch of stuff that's like happening in the right way for them. So I think Binance Pay is now going to have the default currency for all Binance Pay users in USDC. There's like a bunch of folks that are adopting the stablecoin as a path to actually transmit currency across borders. They're using it as wrappers to kind of get around fees that are out there on
Yep.
gas fees. The 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 problem that I see for them is it's going to be a crypto company that is public, and there's going to be a lot of pressure to make money and push that. Like they're pushing on there. Like investors are going to be pushing on them to make money. So you got the Euro one, the URC or URC.
Yep.
I could see them also doing other types of currency ones, like stable coins. Like there's a ton of them. Like I don't know if they would do it, but like a yen based one. There's
Yeah,
some
that's very
big
possible.
markets out there, like the Indian currency one. Now,
Yep.
those regulatory environments in China and India might prevent that, but there's going to be a lot of pressure on Circle to make sure that there's growth, make sure that they're expanding their market and that they're pushing hard. So a public offering here might not be the best path for them in the end. I'm a little
Mm.
concerned that they push. Now, a money raise is going to help them. Like maybe they need to have more in reserves. Like there might be some other sorts of things that this money raise is needed for. Supposedly it's going to raise $750 million, and
Wow.
that again is like a huge like boost for them to either build additional assets to add to the reserves or to push more partnerships and development around there.
Yeah. So there is, being registered with or having an IPO means you have to register with the SEC in the US. And if you don't know, it looks like, getting any form of registration in the US is comparatively harder than anywhere else in the world. So if you are able to successfully get registered in the SEC in the US, you're pretty much set to be able to comply worldwide with any regulation. Now, you did bring a good point. China and India are very different. They are part of BRICS, or the,
Yeah.
unified effort at separating or creating their own currency that will beat the dollar. So I'm pretty sure any nation that is part of BRICS would make it not as easy for a, you know, American or a West company, or even, any new form of modern currency company or asset to overtake what they're doing. So I think Circle is a great company. I think the USDC, which is widely used, and then URC, which is the new currency for Europe, similar to what USDC is doing, you know, I think the best approach that Circle can do is to just keep minting these new stable coins to effectively accelerate the global economy, move it from paper money to digital money. So,
Yeah, the part though that's interesting and that they're gonna have to contend with too is like these tariffs just kind of cratered the U.S. dollars, and so generally like, and I'm not a perfect person on this, and I've just been reading a bunch about it. Is normally when you apply tariffs, the U.S. dollar is supposed to get stronger. That's like a long held belief. The U.S. dollar
yep,
dropped, so it's gotten weaker too. So like there is a risk too that USDC for them becomes less a reserve currency in the world, just as countries move away from the United States. Like Europe is threatening it. Like Russia, China, BRICS, all of these countries are threatening to kind of move away from the US dollar as a reserve currency of the world.
yep.
There could be some big financial risk for them too if the US dollar keeps getting weaker, and like all of those like microeconomic problems happen for them. So it's going to be an interesting path for them because public pressure on a publicly traded company means they're going to have their finances open, and they're going to have a lot of investor pressure.
I agree. So actually, while you're talking, I wanted to pull out some information about what kind of volume Circle has made. I believe last time I looked at it was right around the 2 billions. So right around that ballpark is how much Circle USDC traction was, which, to me, if I'm not mistaken, it's around 2 billion, then I think it's more than ready for an IPO.
Yeah.
There are so many instances where, well, there's been instances, not, I cannot name a particular one right now, but where a company is trying to fundraise, or in the very least get an IPO, or, you know, fundraise in a capacity, but they don't meet the KPIs, they don't meet the demand for it, and investors and accredited banks, they'll just pull away. So,
Yeah.
in
If
USDC's case, they're more than ready.
Yeah, if this goes well, though, it's going to be a signal for every crypto company that the market is ready for more crypto companies to go public. And that kind of ties into the Kraken stuff. Like, if Circle proves this out over the next, I'm not sure when they're going to go public. Like, I imagine maybe a Q3, Q4. I'm not sure how fast these things kind of happen. Like, sometimes I hear about them and then it's a year later. but there's also like other times I hear about it and it's like 2 months later they're about to hit the market. So
For sure.
I'm not sure how fast that they're gonna be able to kind of flow into being a public company.
Yeah, you have a good point. So I was able to find a very good link here. Business Wire is a pretty good media outlet. So this is some USDC momentum, and I'm not sure you can see it, but
Yeah,
just in 2024, there was over 20 trillion in transaction volume, and with a monthly transaction volume of about 1 million or 1 trillion.
1 trillion.
Can't talk there. Yeah, so we're talking trillions, and mind you, about 560 million people in the world own crypto. That's about 6.5% of the total global population. And we're already seeing, you know, numbers surpassing the trillions. So,
Yeah,
crypto
like
is here to
it's
stay.
it's huge. Like I
Super.
think, if this all goes well, like, Binance adopting as a stable coin, like Binance is a huge international exchange. Like I think it could go very far. And USDC, like right there, is empowering unbanked and underbanked populations. Like that's kind of interesting that I haven't actually thought about that. Because
Mhm.
a lot of other countries, developing countries, want to their people want to hold US dollars because oftentimes the currency in that country is just not stable. Look at Argentina. Like if you
Yep,
work with anybody in Argentina, they want to hold US dollars. There's a whole, there's a blue chip market that you can go, get currency exchanges in that country from US dollars to, the Argentinian dollars and back and forth because the regular markets are just so bad.
for sure.
No, I think it's going to be really interesting. I want it to go well because I want it to prove out the crypto market to a large extent, but I fear there's also a lot of like regulatory just like pressure that's going to come at some point. There's going to be a lot of investor pressure, and then they've got just the economics of the world happening right now on the US dollar. So they're going to have to move fast to like push out of just like the US dollar, like I would love to see more just of these stable coins from them, even like a Mexican peso, Canadian franc, like these I think would allow them to have more like surface area, and then also if you could
Yep.
like exchange it super easily, no currency exchange like crazy rate up hikes, like that would be really cool, especially because they're the ones building them.
Yeah, I mean, Mexico, people often regard it as a third world country or even a second world country, but no, it's very much a first world country, and based on their new political approach, it looks like it is going to be exponentially growing. The peso is probably going to become more relevant for trade, not just here in the US, assuming, the world doesn't end. The economic world doesn't end because of the tariffs and everything, but I digress. Like a stable coin for the Mexican peso would be very huge.
Yeah. I kind of want to talk about Kraken a little bit before we hit up the other topic because it kind of ties into the IPO space, and I touched on it a little bit. Is the fact that Kraken is mulling an IPO in 2026.
For sure.
That's like that's a big shift for them. They talked about doing one in 2022. I think they didn't really do it for regulatory reasons, but Kraken is kind of like one of those smaller ish like brand names in the crypto space. But I've always liked them more because they have these like meme coins. They adopt coins faster than most of the other places. Coinbase is pretty slow to adopt a token. They've been faster in recent months, but Kraken has always been like, if it's somewhat of a trending thing, like boom, it's on the platform pretty quickly.
Yeah. So that's our second biggest story, which is Kraken's IPO. It is another big exchange. Actually, they are maybe up there as far as the same volume they get per month as Coinbase is, and Coinbase is probably the biggest crypto exchange in the US. In the East and other countries, by China, they use Binance, or rather anywhere else outside of the world, they use Binance. But, Coinbase has a very large reputation for being one of the most secure platforms, and Kraken falls just short behind that. they're still very popular. They're very secure. They prioritize, security and KYC and everything. And, I am not surprised that they're now trying to launch an IPO. In fact, in my opinion, if they launch an IPO, they would probably, you know, become among the top three most used exchanges just because people who are outside of crypto, they're gonna see that, oh, hey, this company IPO'd, that means it's legit. You know, even though only 6.5 people, or rather 6.5% of the entire global population use crypto, that number is fast growing. And if there's more companies becoming established that are part of the space, that can help certainly with adoption.
So what's really interesting is you're talking about like exchange volume, like what's the biggest exchanges.
Yep.
Kraken's actually pretty relatively small. Like I just texted you the link if you want to pop it open.
So
Like
yeah,
that that I'm shocked. Like they're number 13. And some of these
really.
I haven't really heard of before. Like I know KuCoin, obviously crypto.com. I think
Oh, well,
everybody knows crypto.com because of their arena and like their advertising that they do in every like sporting event. But
yep.
I'm shocked, like even just some of the other ones. I knew Tether was a really big one for Kraken. Like that's actually the reason why I got on Kraken at one point was because I needed some Tether and like Kraken was one of the few American ones that I could
Yep.
go and get. But it's just really interesting to see, Tether, and it's both versions of Tether too. I think that's the reason why. Bitcoin,
Yep.
USDC, Ripple. Bitcoin again. I wonder if it's from which I don't know why they break it up like that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting graph, but here, its latest volume for about 24 hours was about, 1 trillion,
Yeah,
1.3 trillion.
1.3 trillion.
So
No,
that's
it's a
insane.
massive exchange, and like considering you look at that, like it's just it's huge. Like
Dang.
comparative to others, but also again, Tether is like their biggest one, and I don't know if anybody else really trades Tether at that high of volume. Like I guess Coinbase does at number 4, but
I think a lot of people are not very happy with Tether because the context behind it is that I think it was Don or the founder of Tron, if I'm not mistaken.
yes.
He, launched Tether, but that guy has some bad reputation in the back. So it's the whole thought that, oh, the next SBF sort of thing with Tether, which ironically enough, FTX or the FTT token was based on Tether. So
Yeah.
I'll be honest,
And
I'm
it's a
not the
stable coin
most.
too.
It
Like
is.
that's what it was built as. Like there's two versions of Tether. I think there's Tether that's on the Tron network, and then there's the Tether that's not on the Tron network.
Yeah.
It's a little confusing whenever you're dealing with it because it's like which network, and if you mess up, you could like lose your Tether.
Yes. So I'll admit I'm not the most Tether uh, versed. I'm not very familiar with it. That's as far as I know. But, if you go anywhere on crypto Twitter, I mean, people are still going to be using Tether. It's widely popular. I mean, this is pretty evidential. But, maybe it's because of my lack of knowledge why I'm not, very comfortable using it. I am happy using pretty much any coin here. Hell, I'm seeing that fart coin, which is about 43 cents, which is a Solana based meme coin. If you don't know, fart coin is actually an insane meme coin. And, Pepe, which is also, I believe, well, that one's ERC20. We're seeing these two meme coins be up here. That's another story. But the fact that Kraken has these tokens listed, it's pretty big. So
Yeah.
all that to say, Kraken IPO, you know, I believe it's approaching 2026 for its launch, but you never know. It could happen sooner. I think this is going to create a precedent for any crypto exchange, maybe any crypto product, where, you know, it is in the very least being more recognized than it was before under this new administration, at least. So who knows? Maybe this could push forward a golden age of the crypto space. Once, the SEC steps in, they create that regulation within the next 3 to 4 years. You know, a lot is happening, and I believe traditional finance, like IPOs and traditional banks, intersecting with cryptos for fundraising rounds for IPOs again. I think that's a symptom of what's to come next, which is all good.
Yeah. No, no, no.
Mm.
It makes more sense to me to have like Kraken going public than a Circle to some extent because the way for Kraken to grow is get more volume on the platform, advertise more, push more of that. Like it's super easy.
For sure. So I know we've kind of spoke a lot today about IPOs, but we do have another major story, which it's with a decentralized exchange. And if you've been on the Solana space for a while, this should maybe not be any surprise to you. But you know what Pump.fun is, Leon?
Yeah.
That
Oh yeah. It's been all over the Twitter because it's all the meme coins.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, just for context, Pump.fun is a meme coin extravaganza, launching a platform to create your own meme coins. Uh, Pump.fun created its own decentralized exchange called PumpSwap. Well, within the first 10 days, it reached over $20 million in trading fees. That's
In 10
uncommon
days. That's
in
huge.
10
Like
days.
oh, it kind of just shows like how much a meme is worth. Like like meme coins are they're a little shady from time to time. Like what happens with all of them, and honestly, like the name of this Dex is kind of funny. It's just pump swap, like pump and dump, like. But that's a ton of money. Like it's all Solana backed, right?
Everything is Solana backed. And
Yeah.
maybe Pump.fun is the reason why Solana became more popular than Ethereum. Now, Ethereum's price has been stagnant for maybe the last, I think 2021 was the all-time high. It's nowhere near
Yeah.
that, like almost reaching what, 5,000? Now it's barely even reaching 2,000. Well, Solana, it recently broke in the 200s again. I think right now, given the state of the market, it's right below or right around $170. Or rather, here it is. It's about 116, and Ethereum it's about 100 or I'm sorry, 1,792. So, right now, these prices are a little bit high, but nowhere near as high as they were just early January. So,
Yeah.
Solana ecosystem is widely successful because of Pump.fun.
I like Solana is the reason it's become overall a big focus is because of all the meme coins, and it's kind of
Yep.
depressing to see Ethereum not really move on price. Like everyone said that Ethereum was the one, but I think the problem with Ethereum is the gas fees. Like they have
Yes.
not solved that network congestion. Like I know like Solana has some problems. Most of it's like at the exchange level. Like Coinbase doesn't have enough to deal with the volume. But it's it's kind of just depressing to see because I never really saw Solana as like a long term like crypto in my eyes initially. I was like, oh, it's it's kind of a fun meme coin. Like you've got some NFTs, and I was like, when the NFTs kind of died and all this other stuff kind of came about, I was like, oh, Solana's going to get crushed, and it just through and through the memes, and I really discounted the internet of memes being like the
Yeah.
driving force for this exchange.
If you ask me, the reason why I think meme coins are kind of like the new trend for crypto is just a lot to do with how we are as a society. We use memes for everything, for marketing, for communicating, even in the day job or, in a office setting job.
That's why
People
you
go
have
around.
Giphy on Slack, man.
Exactly, you have Giphy there, and a lot of the times they're just memes that were pulled from Reddit, from Twitter, or even from TikTok now. So, you know, meme coins, they're just. a good way to kind of explore, if you ask me, I think meme coins are fun and, decent way to get into the crypto ecosystem. I would not advise someone who is new in the space to use Pump.fun or, any, NFT place to start trading these digital assets because it is, for context, I've been in crypto since like late 2018. But I got more serious into it in 2020. So realistically, about 5 years. You know, even back then, you had NFTs, you had like ICOs or like
Yeah.
initial coin offers. There was so much FUD, there was so much, news happening. And if you're not careful enough, you can lose your money because what seems to be like a serious headline turns out to be a scam. You click on a link and they'll route you to some website that might look familiar, like MetaMask or some
Yeah.
exchange like Coinbase. You put in your account login and you lose all your money. So you can never trust everything.
That's why I also think like this is actually the like it's kind of making meme coins legit. Like, you have the
That's
Huck
one.
to a girl that,
Oh yeah.
kind of made meme coins like another like, oh, it's just for scams. And for a little
Hmm.
while, I was kind of like in that market of like there, but you've got Trump with a coin, you got Melania coin, like there is more legitimacy being brought to the meme coins as like that it's not just a fun thing that like investors see it as something, and then also just like folks on the internet that are like, hey, this is kind of cool that I could just like buy a little bit of it, maybe make some money, do something fun, and then all of a sudden, I'm doing good.
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing I'll say, and this is kind of overlapping with traditional finance, but and this is completely separate headline to anything else. But Newsmax actually IPO'd earlier this week, and I actually didn't know about it until you told me about it, Leon.
I
So,
was so mad.
you know, if you look, and I'll pull the graph here just for reference, but if you look at how traditional crypto tokens perform, it's kind of like that, for lack of a better word, it starts out very low, it exponentially rockets, maybe
Yeah.
like 1,000%, and then it drops like almost 1,000%. So it looks like a pyramid almost as far as the slope of the graph. But if you look at Robinhood, or any other exchange that has Newsmax listed, you're gonna see that Newsmax kind of had that same performance. So not to, you know, change subjects here very, you know, rapidly, but you know, this kind of performance is what you would see with memed coins. So, it launched its IPO at maybe $10 and then it went up to about 214. So that's
Yeah.
almost a 1,500%. And now it's worth about 60. So all that to say that, with Pump.fun, there needs to be a bonding curve established by having people put a lot of money into a token. A lot of the times people scam other people on Pump.fun, which is why we don't recommend it. But, you know, that kind of performance we've already seen with stocks. I believe penny stocks if you've seen Wolf of Wall Street,
Yeah.
it kind of goes back to what the 1970s, the 1980s, where stocks were, you know, kind of the meme coin back then. People would
Hmm.
do so many scams back then. And now we're starting to see that again happen with meme coins and with crypto. But stocks are used now for 401ks and Fidelity, this is another story for later, but Fidelity is starting to look into, crypto adoption. So, maybe crypto will be part of your 401k. Maybe Fart coin or Pepe coin might be part of your 401k. You never know what's going to happen in the future.
No, no, it's really interesting. I'm glad though that like some of these exchanges are making them more legit. Also, I think it'll help kind of like stop these fraud and rug pulls more and more if like
Yes.
it's all out in the open and people are seeing it. it'll still happen. And I like your comparison. Like meme coins are not really a new thought. Like this stuff has been happening for ages, and I'm sure even before stocks that there was essentially a meme coin equivalent.
Right. Exactly. So, you know what, Leon? I do have a couple more stories here, just not more like honorable mentions rather
Yeah.
than like our biggest headlines. But, do you have any other thoughts before I get to that as far as what
No,
we've
let's
seen?
jump into those other quick hits. Like I think they're again, this was a huge like news week. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, a lot has happened. We were kind of debating like, hey, what should we talk about? Should we talk about like the IPOs? Should we talk about, Kraken and everything? And kind of last minute, we decided to go with what we did. And right now, we kind of just want to throw some honorable mentions. Like MasterCard is building its own blockchain-powered payment network, which might be a sign of them releasing their own token or maybe just releasing their own infrastructure like Ripple XRP. But, if you're familiar with the crypto space or the technology, whenever there's a network, whenever there's a blockchain, there's always a token associated with it because the token is what actually allows the money to be moved within said network. So if you ask me, there's a very high likelihood that we're going to see a MasterCard token or something, which
Yeah.
huge. That's kind
Yeah,
of huge.
these big companies, what they're trying to do is reduce costs by stopping money transmission, problems. Like I could see American Express doing this. Like right now, if you have an American Express card or any premium credit card or premium bank account, like they're gonna give you free like a currency exchange. Like that's probably what they're going to use these for is to stop like a euro going to US dollar and having that hard currency exchange with intermediary banks and everything. That's probably what they're looking at. And then on top of that, it probably stop fraud. Like if they could
Yep.
tokenize everything and say, hey, this is where this purchase came from, this is who it's supposed to have been, but actually this is what happened. Like it's gonna stop fraud, and they're gonna be able to track their purchase stuff like way easier. I guarantee it. So there's some benefit. They should team up with Circle.
Yeah, I think that that could happen. MasterCard has a stock, right? I believe
Yeah, they're
it's
publicly
called.
traded. They're huge.
Okay, yeah. So it's very common for these very big public companies to work with one another. So, to your
Yeah, like
point, yeah.
Visa, Mastercard, American Express, Discover. Like they're all the huge ones that they're gonna need to do this for the purpose probably of just dealing with like currency exchanges across the world.
Yeah. So, there's this meme where you have, I'm guessing, the MasterCard saying, I've been swiping through the centuries, but now it's time to tap into something new. Part of the old finance club members only. So now, Web3 comes in and he's like, hey, what are these blockchains, NFTs, wallets without leather? It's all digital. And then MasterCard comes in saying, hey, let's bring the gap. You'll bring crypto, I'll bring the convenience. Finally, crypto payments that don't feel like rocket science. And then you have consumer merchants, institutions. Welcome to the new world of digital assets powered by Europal, MasterCard. So, you know, I'm not surprised. We already have MasterCard and Visa based credit card or debit cards for crypto companies like MetaMask and Coinbase. Coinbase is Visa and MetaMask. Latest new card is based on MasterCard. So I believe this is kind of what it's trying to say here, how
Yeah.
it's quickly being adopted.
Oh yeah.
But, if you have anything else to say, Leon, I
No.
think our last story to talk about today is with PayPal, which is another traditional finance giant. So PayPal expands crypto offerings, adding Solana and Link for US customers.
Yeah, the Solana one, I think again, it's kind of solidifying Solana as a mainstream crypto. Like when you talk about crypto, for a long time it was Bitcoin, it was ETH, it was Litecoin for a little while. Like those were the big three for a very long time. I think it's going to become like Bitcoin, Solana, like some other ones that are around there like Ripple and all that, and then you're gonna have like stable coins kind of like on its own separate list. But man, Solana is just becoming it. I'm kind of surprised about Chainlink just because I haven't heard a lot of like anything really about it.
So I know Chainlink. I'm not seeing any. I'm not sure how far I want to go into Twitter here. Just because you never know what you can encounter. But um, LinkedIn. Chainlink is actually a interoperable framework or protocol where you can kind of, well, their purpose is to link other networks with one another. So
Yeah, off
kind
chain, on
of
chain, all that.
pretty much. So Link, the token itself, I'm not sure what it's worth right now. I actually haven't looked at Link in a long time, but
Same.
so, but I would still, I still have some holdings with Link. I don't think Link has a lot to offer right now as far as token utility. I think it was trying to develop some sort of, cross-border, transaction swapping where it's kind of like a decentralized exchange where you can swap your money from one currency to another currency within the same network. But with Chainlink, it's trying to do the same, but for different networks. So for Ethereum, Solana, Cardano, you name it, even Bitcoin. I think that's the biggest utility behind it, but we haven't seen much since, I believe, or at least something that will be mainstream crypto space newsworthy. Now,
Yeah.
Solana, everyone knows Solana at this point. Even my mom actually came asking me like earlier this week, like, hey, I heard about this token called Solana. See, you tell her crypto, you tell most boomers, I guess, crypto, they'll think about Bitcoin only. But the fact that she already knows the name of another token that is not called Bitcoin, I think it's pretty evidential.
Yes.
And mind you, Solana has only been out for 5 years. So 2020, I believe it's the year it came out. And, PayPal, traditional finance, I think it's doing something good as well by offering consumers more options. But what we're seeing right now is similar to what we are seeing earlier with MasterCard, traditional finance meeting Web3.
Yes. And PayPal, I know PayPal's like a little bit of the it was the new finance giant on the block, but now they've become no different than a regular bank. So them
Right.
adopting crypto in this manner, like I could see them, especially like Link, like being able to use it as some fundamental thing or adding something. But we'll kind of see what happens. It was a big week of news. Like there's
It
definitely a
was.
lot more stuff that happened too.
Yeah, certainly. But, I think these were some of the biggest stories in the crypto space and crypto Twitter and, you know, traditional finance meaning Web3. That's probably as big as it's going to get.
Yes. Yeah, no. It's exciting. Like the fact that SEC pulling back, the Trump administration's like allowing crypto kind of flourish, and then every one of these crypto companies were like waiting for regulatory change that they're going to be able to start innovating, they're going to be able to start raising more money and figuring out how to build actual utilities into like the public markets and like everything that people touch every day.
Yeah, certainly. So we'll see what happens. We're still early, despite, Circle having over $20 trillion in, volume in just 2024. We're still early.
Yes, yes. No, I like it. We went a little long today, but this was it was a meaty week. I was excited to talk about all of this.
Same. Me too. Me too. But yeah, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Stay up to date with the booze, with Social Ledger Report, and we'll
Yeah.
be seeing you next week.
All right. I'll talk to you later, and then all the notes are always in the. We'll link all the articles and links too that we had in there.
Yeah, everything will be down here below.
All right. Sounds good. Bye.